We're going to turn the paper over so we have the white side up. And we're going to start by folding one edge to the opposite edge. And I suggest when you make these creases that you don't press the paper completely flat until you see that you have it in place. Okay? So I pressed it flat. I use a tool to help me. When you've done that, unfold it, and we're going to fold the opposite edge to match its partner. Press it flat with a handy tool. And now we're going to do the same thing. Press it flat on the table. We're going to fold one corner to the opposite corner. Most origami paper that is commercially available is not completely square. So you may have to make a choice between which corners are actually going to line up. And in this model, if you're a very tiny bit off, it shouldn't matter too much. The most accurate paper is the paper you cut out by yourself from a larger piece of paper with a very sharp knife. Okay, and then you do it the other two remaining corners. With luck, all your creases will cross at one point in the center. I think I have lucked out this time. And we flatten it. Okay, spread the paper flat again, giving it a gentle pinch right at that diagonal line. So you can see here where the crease crosses the diagonal there. And repeat that on all four corners. Just enough to make a mark because we're going to be folding to that mark. And then we're going to fold each corner to the pinch mark that we just made and make another pinch or another impression. Okay, and it looks like this. Now we're going to take the edge of the paper, and we're going to be folding it to the closest pinch marks, parallel to the horizontal edge of the square. And again, don't press flat until you've lined it up on both the left and right sides to make sure it's truly parallel to the edge. Like so. Once you have it parallel to the edge, you could go ahead and flatten it. And then repeat on the other three sides. What we're doing in this step is we're going to be extending the four corners in order to make the pieces of paper that will protrude from the top of the top to make the little handle that you spin. This model is derived from the spinner in my previous book, Tenfold Origami, and I was very happy with that model except for the fact that it didn't have a handle on top, so to spin it you had to grab the edge of it and toss it like a frisbee or spin it between your fingers. And I had really wanted to make a little piece that would stick out from the top, and so this is the technique that I came up with. And nearly finished here, reasonably parallel. Okay, and now we can pinch at the corner and fold them all in. And then we will have the corners sticking out at the sides. So the paper looks like this. Now we're going to fold it along one of the diagonals with a mountain fold. So we get a large triangle. And we're going to be looking closely at one corner. And our next step at this corner is to fold it so we're going to get this bottom edge here to come to where the white paper and, in this case, the blue paper intersect. And this is how it will look on that side. And press it quite flat once you've done it. And then we're going to unfold it, and we're going to unfold the entire corner. And when we do that, we're going to be doing an open sink fold and sinking the paper through the creases that we've made. So that requires there are no new creases in this step. And you have to manipulate all of them equally. Again, don't flatten until it feels like they're all in place. And if you've made crisp folds, it should fall in place very nicely. And then you will have a little bit sticking up like so. So I'm going to do the final flattening here. And that's one of the four corners. You can now proceed to the one that's on the opposite of the same diagonal and do the same on that one. And this step is rather painstaking. Do your best to make it as accurate as you can. Again, I open it out. Some of these creases will need to be turned inside out. If some of them are slightly off, you might want to shift them as you make them crisp. Okay, two completed, and now I'm going to open up the paper, a few more flattening creases, and crease the opposite diagonal in order to do the two other corners. I'm taking one more look at these. They ended up not quite in the same place, so I'm going to just see if I can shift the paper ever so slightly to make them align before I proceed to the last two corners. Okay, I think I'm a little happier with that location. These two now match much better. And now to this corner. You will find with this model that just about everything that you do, you will have to do 4 times. And love it. Okay, 3 down, 1 to go. 4th corner. This is probably the most tedious part of the model. There are 1 or 2 other steps that are tedious. Many of them are quite fun. To redeem it, the end product is certainly worth it. Okay, all 4 done. And so this is what we have. I've got the points sticking out to the sides. And now we're going to collapse the paper on the diagonals. We're going to turn the diagonals into mountain folds. Sorry, valley folds. Valley folds. Just getting all the folds in place before it's collapsed. And now we find that these 4 corner points stick straight down. That's the only way they can go easily. And there is mine. Okay, this is what we have. And we're ready now for taking the top central point and folding it to the center of the edge opposite and giving it a very firm crease. It's a valley fold. I'm going to use this one as well. Okay, and then while it's down, we're going to do a crease, a diagonal crease, folding this lower edge to the horizontal upper edge. And then at the place where those creases cross, we're going to make a horizontal valley fold at the intersection. And before you press it flat, here I've made it so by eyeballing, this is vertical, but I'm going to turn the paper over and I'm going to make sure that it lines up with the edge that's or crease that's visible here. And once they're lined up, then I know that the bottom crease I just made is horizontal, and then I can flatten it. Okay, now we open it back up, and I'm going to do a little flattening of these creases that I made. And just you noticed, I'm sure, that this point sticks out above here when we did this fold. Now we're going to make that work 3-dimensionally. We're going to do a double sink fold. So we're going to spread the paper open to make a square, and there's an outer square of creases and an inner square of creases. And we're going to put mountain folds in the outer square of creases and valley folds in the inner square of creases. So it's a double sink. The paper will sink down and then back up. And I like the double sink fold. I used it in my crab in my first book, Folding the Universe, and it's very handy. And again, I'm manipulating the paper from the inside and the outside to make sure that I'm right on the creases that I've made. No new creases. can see from the back. And then I collapse the paper carefully, and that point is sticking up in the center. And then I'm going to press it flat all the way through. I'm pressing flat the invisible interior creases. And this is going to be the point that it spins on. So this set of steps that we just did was intended to get this point to stick down below that line. Okay, our next step is a little tricky but fun. We're going to spread the paper from the inside and flatten it. But we're going to flatten it at this line right there, that edge. So I've opened the paper here, and I'm actually going to, I can hold it at this point. And one way to do this flattening is to pull up this edge here all the way to that point right there, and swing it up so it lines up with that edge. Very carefully close the paper, and do the same thing on this side. And my tweezers will help me get the right spot there. And this is tricky. So this is what it looks like so far. And I'm going to very carefully spread it, and you'll notice that the triangular tip is untouched. It's going to spread flat like that. So on one side it looks like this. Now's the time to flatten these. A few extra flattening motions. And the other side you can see the tip. So now we're going to do some rotating, and we're going to swing, sort of swivel this flap this way, and the diagonally opposite flap this way. So we're making a pinwheel shape, okay? And you can see on both sides what we're going to do. But the very important thing in this step is to not squash this tip. This tip is, its strength comes from staying vertical, projecting from the paper. So I'm going to actually hold it up in the air while I do this flattening, like so. Okay, now I can flatten it. As long as the tip is sticking up, I can flatten it right on the paper. And the tip starts to pinwheel a little bit. So once I've flattened these creases, and again this tool is very helpful for that, I can try to straighten out this pinwheel very slightly. And there's my pinwheel. Okay, now for the rest of the folding of the bottle, this pinwheel, this little pyramid has to stick up. So you can either try to do the creases in the air, or another approach is to fold at the edge of the table and make sure that the little pyramid is sticking off the table. So that's what I'm going to do. And the first step here is to swivel. I'm going to grab with my fingers this corner here, okay, about where the color meets the white, and I want to swivel it this way, but you'll notice it's trapped by this white piece of paper. So I'm going to lift up the white piece of paper as I swivel it. This flap goes in the air, and Then in the process of, I'll show you, this is what it looks like in this direction. And now I'm ready to flatten this. And I'm going to flatten it so that this crease here ends up vertical. And the other creases also should fall in line with other creases and edges on the paper. Everything is very symmetric and geometric in this model. So you'll notice this crease is landing here, this one is landing here. I have a tiny, tiny bit of white paper showing here. You may or may not see any. Mathematically you wouldn't, but because of the thickness of the paper you might see a little bit. It really shouldn't matter. Okay, I'm going to press that very flat. Then I'm going to swivel this flap over, and if you swivel it a little bit, you see that there's the actual edge of the paper. You start to see a little bit of the white, and I'm going to swivel it so it's landing right on the diagonal. And then I'm going to flatten it so I create, so this edge here lands right at that corner and at that line there. And again, I have that little pyramid just off the edge of the table. And then I'm going to very carefully swing, so this is where we are now, and I'm going to very carefully swing this little flap up so that the line separating the color and the white stays on that diagonal. And I'm going to flatten this little thickness right there. And sometimes you might find it helpful while doing this to turn the paper over and flatten it from the other side, because then you could put the entire model on the table. And it is a little tricky to get everything flat without crushing the pyramid. Okay, so we've now completed one of these corners, and we're going to rotate the paper, and we're going to do the same thing. I'm rotating it counterclockwise. You could do it either way, but that's how I'm doing it here. And we're going to do the same procedure with the next corner. So again, I'm lifting it up. Okay, it's partly blocked by this white paper. So lift up the white paper and help it over. Swing it like the page of a book. And I'll show you again from this side. And now I'm going to flatten it again down. This crease again is vertical. And it really should look identical to what we did with the other corner. So I'm going to speed up a little bit here if I can, because it is exactly the same process. I'm just giving everything a nice crease there. I'm swiveling this over so that we see the raw edge of the paper. Now you'll find that when this little pocket forms here, which I'm helping along with the tool, it has an edge to fold against made in the previous step. And this flattens here, you can see vertically. And I'm taking care to look at the back of the paper now to make sure that my creases are lining up on the back. And then, as we did before, this swings along the diagonal and straightens out. And now we have two corners done. We're going to give it a little bit of a flattening from here, especially inside the the little recesses of that pyramid. I'm going to rotate the paper counterclockwise again. Take another corner. Help it along by lifting up the white flap. Flatten it down, like so. It's lining up nicely. And then again, this gets folded over to expose the raw edge of the original square paper. Lands against the existing edge that we made in the previous step. It may take a little bit of work on the inside to get everything lined up. There will be inaccuracies as you fold, and you may have to make adjustments, as I am now, as you go along, and basically you're just trying to get as much as possible to fall into place. And again, because paper has a thickness and folds increase the thickness, it's not going to work out as perfectly as a pure mathematical model would. Okay, so now folding this back for the third one here and flattening it. 3 corners done, 1 to go. Rotate the paper. Swing it like the page of a book. Help it along by lifting up that white flap. View from the inside. Same kind of flattening. Hopefully things are falling into place. Rotating, exposing the white part of the paper, the very edge of the original square. Okay, everything's still exactly the same. And now we find we've done the exact same thing, and we have obscured part of the very first flap that we made. And now we need to make this completely symmetric in a radial symmetric fashion, because it does spiral or it does pinwheel. We're going to have to lift up the final flap that we made and tuck it in and under the part of the very first flap. So the first step there is to take this this edge triangle, that one, and tuck it into the triangle that is underneath. And this merely repeats what we've been doing each step of the way, although it may not seem it, but every one of these other triangles is tucked under, but we just folded ours on top. Now we have to tuck it underneath. And then finally we have this last flap of paper that has to go under this flap. And that completes the symmetry and gets us to this point. So we have these four corners sticking out, a little bit like petals. And I'm about to flatten everything, but I'll show you how it looks from this side and how it looks from this side. So I'm going to take a moment now and just flatten first with my fingers and then with this tool. Again, I'll be very careful about that pyramid. And once you have that, we're ready for really the final step, which is to form the top part of the top, the part that you spin with your fingers. So we're going to create mountain folds exactly where the color and the white meet on these four corners. So one by one, I'll just fold over the edge. Okay, and there's one of them completed. I'm going to proceed with the others. And I'm going to use the tweezers in this case because I'm finding that my paper has slipped a little bit away from the corner. And I want this mountain fold to go as much to the corner as I can get it to go. Third one. And fourth one. And having completed all four, I think I'll flatten them a little bit like this through all the thicknesses of the paper. Okay, and now I'm going to stand them up again so they're projecting out of the flat plane of the paper. And this is now going to be very tricky. You'll notice that for every white flap, there's an adjoining blue flap on the next corner. And if you look carefully, there's a little pocket that's formed. So the inside of the blue flap is a pocket that is entirely white on the inside. So I'm going to tuck one purely white flap into this white pocket. And now I've done it, and you'll see it stands up like that. I'm holding it in place from behind, but it stands up out of the paper. And I'm going to try to hold that together while I do the next one. The goal is to have this tip stay together while you fold all of these white flaps into the adjoining pocket. And I folded quite a number of these tops. Sometimes I'm more successful than at other times. I've got 3 of them, and now the tricky part is getting the 4th, but it can be done. It has been done, and by golly, it will be done. I had it, and I lost the first one. So this takes a little bit of time. You may luck out the first time. Nearly there. This is the danger of doing it live. And I'm going to take advantage of the tweezers. Okay, I've succeeded. So I have all of these corners together, and I'm going to just we're going to rotate these, and we're going to rotate them. We're going to spin them clockwise. So I'm just getting this paper ready at the base to start to spin it. Now take a look. I'm going to just hold it and rotate a little bit, so you can see the equivalent to rotating the tip clockwise is to rotate the base counterclockwise. So you may be doing both. You're rotating them against each other, but take a careful look. Okay, I'll turn it this way. And you have to do it bit by bit, because our goal is to have all 4 of these corners meld together into a single stem. And if you're lucky, it won't come apart in the process. It will stay together. I have lost one corner. One corner came out. That's unfortunate. Let's see if I can salvage it without the whole thing coming apart. Okay, I think I have it back in place. No, it slipped out again. I don't know why. Sometimes it works the first time and sometimes not. And I'm trying my best not to flatten that pyramid. Yes, this is Origami Live, with all the perils and pitfalls of an actual contact sport. Okay, this probably is not my most successful. I know it's not my most successful, but I believe it has rotated enough now for us to give this top a whirl. And let's see how well it works. All right, a lovely spinner. You might find that a little bit of water, spraying a little water on this might help hold it into place. There we have a nice spin. All right, I think we've had a successful top. I hope yours is as successful as this one, if not more so. And I must say I get great pleasure out of this simple toy.